All right, joining me now, I'm going to call him an SI Media podcast regular. I think this is like his fourth appearance. NFL broadcaster Troy Aikman. Troy's here to talk about 8 beer and nothing else.
Yeah, there you go. Yes.
Eight beer and nothing else.
Yeah.
Is it still only in Texas? 8 beer?
Well, yeah, we haven't even launched in grocery stores yet, Jimmy. Yeah. So, I've been asked a lot if we're going to move outside of Texas. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. We'll see. But so far, so good. And we'll launch April 1st in the stores.
Well, whoever's in charge of the marketing and the branding, I mean, you're getting a lot of publicity these days, so that's good.
Yeah. We've rallied the troops, and I think people who have tried it have genuinely liked it. There's really not much not to like. I mean, it's a really good beer. It tastes great, and it's a better for you beer. So, all right, you health nuts out there that like beer, 8's your brand.
Oh, well, we got nothing else to talk about, so thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
And so let's start with this. The question I keep asking, why did Fox let you go? Do you know the answer to that question?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know that I ever will get the answer to that one, Jimmy. You know, what's interesting, I think through it all, look, it's a business. Fox is welcome to do whatever it is that they feel is in their best interest, as I am and as everybody is. So there's no hard feelings about anything. You know, I mean, I had a great 21 years at Fox. I guess what's perplexing to me is that I had no conversation with my boss until he called me to congratulate me on my contract with ESPN. So I don't know. I guess it's disappointing. I would have thought that there would have been a conversation at least. And then when I did talk with him, when he called to congratulate me, I just asked for an explanation on some things that I didn't quite understand, and he opted not to do that as well. So I guess that's where it's left. That's how I'll leave Fox, and that's fine. I'm excited about ESPN and thrilled to be continuing to work with Joe.
That's pretty. I mean, you weren't there for 2 or 3 years. You were there for 20 plus years. You'd think an explanation. Yeah, I spoke to Joe last week, and his situation was different than yours. In that he had a year left in his contract. Your contract was up. Everyone thought you were going to Amazon, so we can get into that. And I asked Joe this question. I'll ask it to you. Were you hurt by the fact that Fox didn't make an effort to keep you?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, like I said, I understand the business, and I think that maybe. I gave 12 years to the Dallas Cowboys and won 3 Super Bowls and felt like the teams that I was a part of accomplished a lot. And I got released at the end of my time with the Cowboys. And my parting call with Jerry Jones lasted all of about 30 seconds. So,
right.
So I think that maybe that hardens you a little bit. You understand it. And I didn't leave the Cowboys with bad feelings either. You just understand that things change. Heck, I wrote a children's book titled Things Change. I understand it as well as anybody. And with that, some of my most exciting moments in life have come following change. So I think it sets up well for the next however many years with ESPN. I'm really excited about it.
Do you think, listen, the money that broadcasters are getting is out there thanks to Tony Romo, basically. The vibe I get, and I could be wrong, you don't strike me as the type of guy that needs every last penny or needs to be the highest paid or needs to get $1 more than Tony. Do you think this was all about money?
Yeah, I think it was. I sense that it was. There was no reason for me to believe that Fox was unhappy with anything that I had done, my work. I think that they were happy with Joe and I really think, and again, I'm merely speculating because I was never told, but I'm guessing that it was an opportunity for Fox to kind of hit the reset button on the economics of the number one booth. That's what I sense.
Gotcha.
And I think that they probably would have liked to have kept Joe. He's a real asset to the company, of course, with all that he does. And when I say all that he does, it goes beyond what the public sees with baseball and football. And then, what he did when the network had golf. He also does a lot behind the scenes for the company. So he was a valued asset, but I think they realized that, he's probably as confused as I am, in the sense that, the talks that I was having with Amazon were going on for quite some time. And yet there was no conversations going on with Joe and how that might impact him.
Right.
And so I think it was just a lack of communication all the way across the board, and probably still continues with a lot of people within the company, and what exactly their next steps are.
When you walked out of the NFC title game, which was the last game you and Joe called for Fox in January, if someone would have told you as you were walking out of that building that you would be calling Monday Night Football next year, what would you have said?
Well, I didn't envision that happening, for sure. It looked like at that time that I was either going to be working exclusively with Fox or doing some kind of split schedule with Fox, and then the Thursday night package with Amazon is how it looked. And then but having done the Thursday night schedule for the last 4 years, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot on your plate. And I was kind of ready to get back to one game a week. So those conversations were taking place. And I think that was Joe's thinking, was that worst case scenario, I just wouldn't be working with him on the early games.
Right.
And then, ESPN got involved. And the people at Amazon were fantastic. I mean, they were terrific. Got nothing but really great things to say about them. They were really good to me and respectful. And I wish them all the best. But then when ESPN got involved, the thing that was compelling for that package is that they still had playoff games. They still will have Super Bowls. They'll be in that rotation. And those are fun games. I mean, those are the most fun games. It was most exciting times of my career were doing the championship games and the Super Bowls. And so to have the opportunity to continue to do some playoff games, and then, coming up in a few years, the Super Bowl, it was pretty compelling to go to ESPN.
Like, if I asked you like 1 to 100, where were you on that scale of going to Amazon?
Well, pretty high. Yeah. I mean, pretty high. Yeah.
So when ESPN came calling, what was your reaction? Were you surprised? What was when you heard them come in to sort of swoop you away?
Not so much surprised. I think, the fact that they kind of jumped in a little bit late. I say late. I mean, I don't know that it was necessarily late, but compared to the conversations that were taking place with Amazon, those came a lot later. But yeah, I just felt that I do understand the importance of a team and the people you're working with and the people you're working for. And there's a lot to that. And like you said a moment ago, I want to enjoy what I do, and the money doesn't bring that about. So it then comes down to the people. And so after visiting with the folks at ESPN and then understanding kind of what it might look like as far as who my partner was going to be, then I said, hey, this is kind of a no-brainer that it's a win-win across the board. So
when ESPN brings you into the mix, does ESPN say to you, we'll try to get Joe for you, or do you say to ESPN, please go get Joe for me?
Well, I think that, I was pretty open with everybody that I had conversations with. My preference was to continue to work with Joe. I mean, that was my preference. And quite honestly, I mean, I thought when I was asked, hey, what's best case scenario? I said, best case scenario is for me to remain at Fox and continue to work with Joe Buck and my crew. That would have been because I've enjoyed my time with Fox. I mean, I've got a lot of lifelong friendships that have been established. I mean, they're as much a part of my family as my family. And, Aaron Andrews talked about it, and the time that we spend together. I mean, it's a lot of time during the football season. We spend a lot of holidays together. We talk to each other about our personal issues and things that we're working through. And so that's been great. I mean, really great. So, to be able to work with Joe, knowing that he had another year on his contract, but then, there was talks that, hey, maybe that it's not unprecedented that Fox had let someone out of their contract. They let John Madden, go to Monday Night Football years ago. It's how Joe and I and Chris Collinsworth got moved up to the number one crew. And I think Fox realized, and I applaud them for that. I mean, I thought it was a generous move for someone who had given a lot, to the network to allow him to depart a year early. I think it was a good move on Fox's part for Joe, but I also think it was a good move on Fox's part for Fox. Right. That they're able to kind of, as I said, not only hit the reset button as far as costs go, but then also to just have a fresh start, much like they had 20 years ago with an entirely new crew.
We learned today, we're taping this on Monday, we learned this morning from John Oran of Sports Business Journal that Fox let Joe out of his contract a year early in exchange for a Purdue-Penn State opening week game that Fox will air in prime time. So that's good material for you to rib Joe with, that he was traded for a Purdue-Penn State game.
Yeah, but not a Disney character.
Right, exactly. Unlike Al. I'm curious because you talk about, and when I spoke to Joe last week, he talked about the comfort, and he said at this point, after all these years, he wants the partner he's had. And obviously you feel the same. But if Joe couldn't have been there, would you think you would have made suggestions for a play-by-play person, or you would have left that up to ESPN? Because I think when they bring you into the fold, I mean, you have to have some say in that, no?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, you would think, which goes back to why it was kind of crazy that Joe wasn't communicated with when there was a chance that I would be leaving for any number of games. I mean, I don't know what to make of that. It's one thing from my end. I don't know what to make of it on my end, but then for a guy that they valued in Joe to not have any communication with him, to at least say, hey, there's a chance that your partner of 20 years may not be working the early games or may not be working for the network period, just so you know.
I'm stunned to hear there was no communication. I will say the one thing I think maybe that kind of gave Fox a little bit of leeway in letting Joe go with you to ESPN a year early is Joe told me this last week, it's on SI.com, that he was going to give up baseball after this season. So I guess that makes the blow a little easier for Fox. But I don't know. I just look at it, I'm in this weird place because I look at it as a fan and as a media person. And to me, if you have the best crew and they've been there for 20 years, you do what you can to keep them. Obviously, Fox thought differently, and we know what the money has gotten like. So I guess it is a business at the end of the day. That's what it's about. Yeah.
And I think, Fox has some really talented young play-by-play guys. Yeah. So their bench is good in that sense. Yeah. So now, I know this, Jimmy. I'm really not looking in the rearview mirror. Right. That I'm really looking forward to Monday night. I just picked up a book, Monday Night Mayhem, that I began reading. I'm about 80 pages into it on the history of Monday Night Football and how Runa Arledge put that group together. And it's fascinating. And I grew up watching Monday Night Football with Don Meredith and Howard Cosell and Frank Gifford, and I'm fired up to be a part of the legacy of it.
So a couple of questions on ESPN and Monday night. I asked Joe this, I'll ask you. Given the coverage that your move has gotten, given now people know what the reported salaries are, given, you were at Fox so long, now it's a new opportunity. Do you feel any extra pressure when this season starts?
I don't know. I don't yet, but I always feel, I don't want to say pressure, but I always feel that, I want to do my best regardless of what it is, whether it's broadcasting, playing quarterback, selling beer, whatever it might be. I just want to be the best that I can possibly be. I hope to make ESPN proud. They've put a lot of faith in me. They've put a lot of faith in Joe. And so with that, it feels good to have an employer that I guess is that values you and trusts us the way that ESPN has shown. So yeah, I would imagine week one, our first game, it's going to be different. I mean, it will be different, even though with Joe coming along, that our booth is the same. I mean, all of our support people will all be the same. And so for he and I, outside of the producer and the director who are on the trucks, and of course the other people that are involved with ESPN on Monday night broadcast, for us in the broadcast booth, it's going to be very familiar, but yet at the same time, we know that it's going to be really different. And that, I think after 20 years together and doing the number one game at Fox, I think that'll be good. I think it'll re-energize us in a way that we maybe haven't experienced. I think the only thing that really is comparable to that is when we first got assigned Thursday Night Football 4 years ago, and to do a primetime game, the only game on for Joe and I was different, and it felt really good, and it's why we continued to do it. So yeah, I think that we know what the expectations are for us, and we plan to deliver that.
I'm curious, when you would watch, these last 20 years you were at Fox, when you would watch Monday Night Football, did you notice differences, big or small, in production, things Monday Night Football did differently that you didn't like, and going into it, you see things you'd like to do, maybe that Fox did, or, you like something ESPN did? Are you looking at a game that way when you're watching it, or are you just watching the game?
A little bit. Yeah. I definitely pay attention to the broadcast, pay attention to what the announcers are saying, what the analysts are saying, the shots, what the producer's doing, how they're setting the game up. And so, as I said, Richie Zients has been my producer for 21 years. I've never, as crazy as that sounds, I started out with Daryl Johnston and Dick Stockton, and Richie Zients was my producer. And then the next year, when Madden left for Monday Night Football, I then moved up to the number one booth, and Richie Zients did as well. So I've only had one producer. I only know one way of doing it. And it's been great. And Richie's one of the best in the business. And so for me to get the opportunity to work with Phil Dean and kind of see now how he does it. And I know he's a pro, he's great. I'm excited about it. We've talked. We're going to all get together and kind of work through some of those things. So I know how they've kind of done their game, which is probably a little different from the way we've done our game, which is great. And
I'm just curious for the listener. Can you share what a difference is? Like, is it really something minute? Like, what would you say is a difference? Just as a viewer, I'd be curious. Like,
well, I think that as far as how you kind of lead into a game, and you can tell, how much, where the producer kind of fits into that, and their fingerprints on the broadcast, as far as what direction the announcers are going. So, but with that said, there's a lot for us to discuss, to just see. It's one thing for me to observe something. It's another thing to then actually be in the room and understand, okay, well, how do you begin a game? What's your philosophy on broadcasting a game? What do you think are the elements that make a good broadcast? Right. And then kind of taking it from there. I have my thoughts on that. Joe certainly has his thoughts on it. Joe has an amazing feel for a broadcast and kind of what a broadcast needs. He definitely has a feel, and I think all great play-by-play guys do. They have a feel for the moment. I mean, they just know when this is and it's one thing for a viewer. You'd say, yeah, well, we all know when well, no, not really. We all know those moments, but there's other times in a game where you just kind of realize, hey, this is kind of a significant time, or here's a good time to interject this. No. So to get to work with a different producer, a different director, and a new team, if you will, I'm looking forward to seeing how someone else does it, and looking forward to those talks.
So with all the coverage, all of the moves have gotten you and Joe and Al's leaving NBC, going to Amazon, Kirk Herbstreit, all these last few weeks, a lot of fans like to have the line, the announcer, we're going to watch the game no matter who the announcers are. And, the announcers don't deserve money because no one deserves money. And, the announcers don't influence a game. And my counter to that is, obviously you're getting paid for more than just doing a game. Like it's part of the product. It's what the NFL wants, top announcers and all that. But in terms of the announcing, I'm curious about something because this is what I've always said. And if I'm just speaking like a dumb fan, I want you to tell me I'm an idiot and I don't make sense. But here's my thing with NFL announcers. This is my thing. Listen, everyone's subjective. You like guys, you don't like guys. Is that for me? And the number one rule for announcers is don't be annoying. I think that's what fans want. But here, for me in the NFL, this is my thing. Late in the game, especially, you need an analyst to be on top of and not make mistakes with clock management, timeout strategies. They should kneel here. They should, kick a field goal here, run out of bounds. To me, that's the most important part of an analyst's job is that last in a close game, fourth quarter strategy, clock management, timeouts. Is that a ridiculous way for me to view announcers in the NFL?
No, I don't think so. No, I think that's what we get paid to do. Right. I mean, that's the mechanics of the job first and foremost. And I think that, I agree that, our job is to bring something to the broadcast, to the game, add something that's relevant, add a layer that the game then benefits from, that a viewer at home, if you're watching a broadcast and I agree with you, you don't want to be annoyed by the announcers. You don't want to feel like they're keeping you from enjoying a game, so that's all part of it as well. And I think that, this is a big business and there's a lot on the line. There's a reason why these networks pay billions of dollars for the rights to cover these games.
Right.
And so the idea that, you can just put anyone in the booth. Yeah, you can. And if it's a good game, people are going to watch, but it reflects on the network. And I think that's the part that maybe gets lost a little bit, in that translation.
I know Joe's going to be doing some other things for ESPN. I don't think it's all spelled out yet. Are you, we're going to see you on First Take debating Stephen A. Smith. What do we have in the works besides that Monday Night Football?
I'm kind of in the same boat as Joe. There's talk about some, on some production side. And so we'll kind of to be determined. So we'll see.
Now, obviously, you're a Hall of Fame NFL quarterback. You played for what is the most storied franchise in the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys. And as you mentioned earlier, you won 3 Super Bowls. Does it blow your mind you're making more as an announcer than you did as the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, well, that's not just this year. I mean, that didn't just happen. But I will tell you that when I retired from football, first of all, when I retired from football, I had an idea I was going to go into broadcasting, but I had no idea 21 years later I'd still be doing it. I just really thought I would do it for a few years and then figure out exactly what I wanted to do and then go and pursue that. But I never imagined when I retired that I would have a job to where I made more money than I did when I played. And it is interesting and it's because of the TV money, ironically enough, that you look at the salaries now. I was paid well when I played.
Right.
And it changed quickly. I mean, the salary structure increased exponentially after I retired. I was amazed at how fast the salaries rose from when I retired. Like within a few years, they were doubled what I was making when I played. So there's a lot of players obviously benefiting from the influx of TV money for these rights.
I would just imagine when you look at like your paycheck, you're like, now I'm getting this kind of money to banter with Joe Buck, and I got less getting assaulted by Reggie White on a weekly basis, and Lawrence Taylor. I don't know if Lawrence, he was still playing probably when you played, but
Lawrence. Yeah, Lawrence Taylor was still playing. I caught him towards the end of his career, thankfully.
Let me take one break from the announcing stuff. Who gave you the biggest, worst, most vicious hit of your career as a quarterback?
Well, there was a linebacker from the Cardinals. It was my rookie year. Last name was Bell, and he hit me. I never saw it coming. He hit me, knocked me out. I was out cold for 5 minutes or so. It's one of the worst concussions that I had.
Wow.
So he hit me the hardest. The guy who always wreaked havoc, though, Jimmy, for the New York fans there. I played against Reggie, of course, twice a year. Played against Lawrence Taylor twice a year. Some really great players, in the NFC East, defensive players during that time. But the guy, and I tell him this all the time, Carl Banks had some monster games against us. And he had opportunities. He didn't shy away from putting me on the ground, but he had opportunities to just kind of end my career. Yeah. And he never did. And I remember my rookie year, they beat us terribly. I mean, they were a really good team. Bill Parcells was the head coach. And at the end of the game, I was beaten about as bad as you could be beaten and walking off totally dejected. And I'll never forget it. He came up, put his arm around me and said, "Hey, kid," he says, "you're going to be a hell of a player in this league." And it meant a lot. It meant a lot to me. It really, it helped out a young quarterback have a little confidence in himself, and I see Carl from time to time. We don't do many Giants games here lately. Hopefully that changes. But when we do, I get a chance to see him. And he's one of my favorite people. And
now you get paid more just to say, I think they should
keep going back to the salary.
Yeah. Huh? Well, I don't listen. To me, it is what it is. It is amazing that a pro football player who takes that physical beating would get less than an announcer. And this is the last thing I would say about the money. And then we don't have to talk about it anymore. Did you send a bottle of champagne to Tony after you signed your ESPN contract? Because Tony got this all started by, gouging CBS, basically.
Yeah, he kind of got the ball rolling. And I think there were a lot of people wondering exactly where the market was, off of that. And so to answer your question, no, I did not send him some champagne, but only because I never thought of it. But you might be right.
Or a case of 8 beer.
Case 8 beer. Now you're talking.
There you go.
I can do that.
I lied. This is the last thing I'll say about the money because it's important. David Hill, former president of Fox, told John Owen and Andrew Marchand on their podcast, I believe, people are going crazy about the salaries for Fox or NBC. It's basically what they make from 2 Super Bowl commercials. It's really when you put it in that perspective, it's not as crazy as, fans don't understand the business of it. But in terms of the business, it's really not as severe as people think when you look at it that way.
Well, and I think if you put it in if you put it in the totality of the cost of covering the NFL and what you're already paying the NFL for those rights, then it's even less.
Is there? I don't know if you've talked to Joe about it or if you have your own thoughts. Anything you guys would look to do differently at ESPN? Is there anything? Maybe I feel like it's a little bit of a. It's a standalone game, but I feel like it's a little bit of a looser atmosphere than Sunday at 4:25. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I definitely felt that way during doing Thursday night compared to Sunday afternoon.
Right.
Thursday just felt it felt lighter. It felt like it was a different broadcast. Than when we did do a Sunday afternoon game. So I think you're right. I mean, it is a standalone game. It's on Monday night, and there are other people watching besides just your hardcore football fans.
Right.
And I think that then should be reflected in the broadcast, and I believe that it will.
Before we covered all the announcing stuff. I appreciate it. I'm going to ask you, if I can, just 2 quick football questions since I got you. Brady coming back. Were you surprised?
No. I was surprised when he announced his retirement. And the reason I say that is for 2 reasons. One is he played great. I would have voted for him for league MVP. And so to leave when you're playing that well, but the biggest part of that, Jimmy, is that Tom had always said that he wanted to play until he was 45. And so that would have been like the first time that he didn't do something that he really set his mind to do and that he had publicly said that he wanted to do.
Right.
And I thought it was I thought it was strange that, okay, the guy played amazing at 44. He's always said he wanted to play till he's 45. I'm not sure exactly why he's stepping away. And then there was talk that, well, maybe there were some rumblings going on in Tampa behind the scenes. I don't know about any of that stuff, but
yeah.
So no, I was not surprised that he came back. I was more surprised that he retired to begin with.
Now you're a Hall of Fame NFL quarterback, so I'm going to ask you to go into his head a little bit, even though his head's maybe a bit off. If you're Aaron Rodgers, what are you thinking right now that Davante Adams would leave you?
It's a good question. I know that I remember years ago when Davante Adams was a young receiver playing on his first contract and hadn't yet really jumped out on the national scene as a receiver. And Aaron Rodgers said, they better lock this guy up now because he's going to get paid a fortune if they don't. I mean, he called it. He said, this guy is incredible.
Yeah.
And they're really close. Aaron loves this guy. I know Davante Adams loves Aaron. So to have that kind of relationship and mutual respect, I'm sure it's been really hard on Aaron. How do you replace a Davante Adams? I mean, you don't. So,
right.
Here you come back and now your go-to wide receiver isn't staying. I'm sure Aaron understands it. I mean, whatever Davante's reasons are, I'm sure Rodgers had conversations with him and he understands it, but that doesn't make it any easier. So
I'd love to know if Rodgers knew Adams wanted to go to the Raiders when he re-signed with the Packers. I think I'd love to know that piece of information.
Yeah, it's a good question. And would it have impacted what Rodgers ultimately did? Who knows?
Yeah.
I always thought that Green Bay was the best place for Aaron. Yeah. I know that he has a great relationship with Matt LaFleur. He loves playing for the organization. He loves playing for the Packers. He loves the fan base, and you say, okay, well, where can he go that's going to give him a better opportunity for more success? Now, this is before Davante Adams decided to leave.
Right.
But I always thought that probably staying in Green Bay is the best place for him to continue to have, MVP type season.
Yeah, I never got the whole Denver thing. I always thought Green Bay was a better fit for him than Denver when there were all those rumors that he'd end up there. So I'm with you on that. Leslie, I don't know if you saw this because it happened just before we started. So you might not have seen it, but have you seen this story that it broke on Monday about Urban Meyer? The Athletic did sort of a deep dive into his disastrous tenure with the Jaguars, and he didn't know who Debo Sweeney was, Debo Samuel was. He didn't know who Aaron Donald was. I mean, could this possibly even be possible?
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Can't imagine that being accurate.
There's a lot in there about toxic work environment of him, threatening to cut players every day and saying that if he cuts them, they're just going to get a $15 an hour job. Like, that's just not flying in the NFL, that motivational approach, right?
Yeah. Well, it didn't there. It might in New England, I don't know. I don't know, nobody gets to kind of peek behind the curtain. I do know this, Jimmy, when Jimmy Johnson came to Dallas,
right.
Hey, he did not treat people with kid gloves. I mean, it was tough, really tough.
Yeah.
And, it's hard. It's hard turning around an organization and the culture when an organization is lost the way that Jacksonville has. And so I'm not excusing anything. I just know that when a coach comes in, it's not easy to do. And you can't just continue to do it the way it's been being done. Then you get the same results. So I like a coach that's tough. I like a coach that holds people accountable. Now, does that mean I like Urban Meyer and his time at Jacksonville? I have no clue. I mean, I just know what I've heard.
Well, to me, like,
when you lose, nobody likes what you're doing.
Right. But to me, he lost credibility right from the get-go when he brought in Tim Tebow to be a tight end. Like, that's really, that's what the guy was a quarterback. So you're going to try to change his position. He couldn't work as a fullback. He's been playing baseball. And now, like, you're big. I know. And I guess, they have the Florida connection and he did it for locker room, et cetera, et cetera. But that's, that's Bush League stuff right there, I think.
Well, again, I haven't talked to Urban about any of it. He obviously has great respect for Tim and what he did for him at the University of Florida. And I always thought when Tim was coming out, if he had been willing to play a different position other than quarterback, you can't tell me that there's not a spot on a roster, virtually every roster, for what that guy could do and the type of leader that he is. And I would think that there would be a spot for a guy like Tim Tebow on every NFL roster in the league. But he was determined to be a quarterback. And I don't know if he looks back and regrets that or not. But whatever the reasons were for Urban to bring him in, they realized it wasn't going to work. And then they released him. So I think that going back to my time with Jimmy with Dallas, he brought in a lot of guys from the University of Miami that he had connections with that some people thought, wow, they were kind of maybe scratching their heads a little bit. And then the greatness of Jimmy was that he released, when he realized a guy wasn't going to fit, he let him go. And ultimately that's what Urban did too.
Yeah. All right, Troy, I appreciate it. And best of luck. I said to Joe, a lot of the coverage around you guys going to Monday Night Football is, bringing back prestige and making Monday Night Football a big deal. I said, you got to have the yellow Blazers if you guys want to do that. So,
yeah, I'd be all for it. I don't know if it'd be a regular thing, maybe it's for certain games, but I will say that when I tuned into Monday Night Football, the Gold Jackets were a big part of that. I'd certainly want to be respectful of the history of the Gold Jacket, but I would not be opposed. I would not be opposed to it at all.
When you were a player, was playing on Monday night a big deal?
Yeah, it was a tough game because of the quick turnaround following Monday night, and then Monday leading up to the game was hard because there was just nothing to really watch and do with your time, so that was challenging. But the actual game itself, it was a huge deal because you were totally aware that it was the only game in town. Your peers were all watching the game and you wanted to go out there and play your best football. So it was absolutely a big deal.
All right. Well, good luck. And we will be watching. I appreciate you coming on and giving me some time.
You got it. Thanks, Jimmy.
All right. Thanks, Troy. Take care.